For the best part of 80 years now, the UK has been debating whether to change the law to allow people to take their own lives if they're terminally ill. And now here in the Channel Islands, we're waiting to see if Jersey's government will legalise assisted dying later this year. But back in the UK, another proposal to change the law has been put forward in the House of Lords again this week, and it passed its second reading. Opponents, including the Archbishop of Canterbury and the leader of England's Catholics, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, say a change in the law would threaten people. The chief rabbi, who is Ibrahim Mirvis, agrees with them.
There is no safeguard that can look deep into a person's heart and determine whether they feel pressure, real or imagined, from those around them. There's simply no way to definitively differentiate between voluntary dying and involuntary dying.
So, Humanists UK and Humanist Channel Islands are campaigning to get the law changed, and we heard from them earlier in the show. You can rewind now on BBC Sounds if you want to hear that again. Professor David Jones is the director of the Anscombe Bioethics Centre, a Catholic organisation which looks at moral questions in medical practice. Good morning to you this morning, David. Thanks for coming on Sunday Breakfast. First of all, why don't you think the law should change then?
I agree with the rabbi. I do think that people would feel under pressure. They would think that they have to justify why they're not going for this option. It would change it for everyone. And I think that at the moment we have a law which prevents assistance in suicide, and irrespective of who the person is. And I think that's fair and equal.
Absolutely. And I know that you have had, you've been involved with the citizens' jury here in Jersey as well. What can you tell me about that?
So the proposals in the House of Lords at the moment are slightly different to the ones in Jersey. The proposals in the House of Lords are actually they're much narrower. They're only for assisted suicide and not also euthanasia. They're only for a doctor, not also for a nurse. They're only for those who are terminally ill, not also for those who are suffering. So the proposals in Jersey are actually much more radical. And it's interesting that in the debate in the House of Lords, it was very evenly split. I mean, it was almost half-half with the arguments on both sides. So I would caution people to look at the arguments before going ahead with this.
How strong is the religious argument against it?
Well, I think that the mainstream view in Catholic, Orthodox, Evangelical, mainstream Anglican, Orthodox Judaism, Islam, both Shia and Sunni, is very strong. I think that both, it's not just the sanctity of life, it's also concern for the vulnerable. And I think there's a very strong wish to accompany people who are dying and accompany people in their suffering and find ways of alleviating suffering, but not in this way.
So what do you fear, we'll continue with the UK and come back to Jersey very shortly, because what do you fear will happen if the law does change?
I fear that what might happen is what has happened in other countries, that people will feel pressure about their health and their health care. I think that professionals, also people in palliative care, will struggle. We've seen hospices closed down in Canada. We've seen people who are being forced to act against their consciences in various countries. I do think that it would have, both for patients and for healthcare professionals, I think it would have a very bad effect.
Clearly, you're going to be having a very close eye over the next couple of months in Jersey then, as this is debated and then voted on. Oh,
absolutely. I think it's key. And I would say in relation to the citizens' jury process, I was involved in that process, and I think that the most aspects of it were very fair and balanced. And the information which was provided was very fair and balanced, and that a number of opinions which came out of it were very interesting, and people should look at it. But in terms of the numbers on the jury, which are sometimes reported, people should be aware that it was deliberately selected to be 80% in favour before they started, which I wasn't actually aware of until I actually read the report afterwards. So they deliberately selected a jury which was in favour, and then the jury was in favour at the end. I think perhaps one person changed their mind. But net. So you shouldn't pay too much attention to the numbers. But in terms of the arguments, both for and against, you should look at those arguments carefully, because they are the arguments of real people. And the process was an interesting process. And it's a very important time for Jersey to consider these arguments now.
Professor David Jones, thank you for joining us on Sunday Breakfast this morning. The director of Anscombe Bioethics Centre, a Catholic organisation which looks at the moral questions in medical practice. And as said there, he did give advice to the citizens' jury on this matter in Jersey.